If you want to see your name at the beginning of all of our videos, as well as see exclusive content here on the homestead, please feel free to join our Patreon. Memberships start off at just $1 a month. And as always, thank you for your support.
Good morning, Vanessa. Here's why I was up till 3 in the morning. I was waiting on this girl to have her babies. I don't think she's had them yet, but we'll go ahead and check. I think she's just fur pulling. Never mind, I lied. She just had babies. Look at her go. You're such a good mama. I'm gonna give you some time to cover those babies back up. You're such a good mama. Looks like we have all blacks this litter, and I don't see a single DOA kit. I'm gonna give Vanessa time to clean her babies, and I'm gonna bring her out a strawberry here in about half an hour to give her some time. Good job, mama. You're such a good girl. So I've given Vanessa time to kind of chill out and clean her babies up. And now I'm doing my morning feed and I can actually get into the nest box. And normally when it comes to moms, what I'll do is I will double their rations just to ensure that they're getting enough. Now, within the first couple of days, what I'm really looking for is litter size, making sure mom has the adequate amount of fur pulled, that she's not over grooming, and that she's not excessively bleeding. And then if this was a mini Rex litter, I would be looking for any peanuts. So I'm gonna go ahead and count to see how many we have. It's cold, so I have the babies all covered up. It looks like we have 7 of them, and they are all blacks. So what I'm going to do is periodically throughout the day, normally 2 to 3 times a day, I'm gonna check to make sure that they're doing all right. And I'm going to start to watch for full bellies to see when mom's milk comes in. But they are all clean and doing well. And when it comes down to this mama right here, she is absolutely fantastic, and I'm not going to worry about it too much. She is just a sweet little baby. I actually get a comment like this quite often, in that people see a weird dichotomy in raising your own animals and then also being able to butcher them, which this is only something that's recent in human history. Because we have ready access to food, it is very detached when we see a piece of meat to the animal it once was. There are so many parties in between the animal to our dinner plate that a lot of us forget where our animals come from. But that doesn't necessarily make it weird for somebody to raise their own animals and butcher them. Now, I have a lot of people who also, they can't butcher out their own animals, so they either use a cull buyer or a butcher to do it for them, which is also completely normal. But at the end of the day, it's actually less stressful on the animal that they see me, they know me, and they get used to our routine and that there's a trust between us. They go through the same routine day in, day out. It's less stressful on them. And then one day the schedule changes and I butcher them. There is a trade-off. They have a great life for one bad day. And during that one bad day, they only have seconds before it's over. By raising my own meat, I am assured that they are raised in proper care and that the end goal is quick and swift. So it's a good thing that they trust me. And it's not a weird thing for us. It's just the day in the life of a homesteader. I am on my quarterly visit to Pet Talk thanks to the algorithm, wherein I end up on the wrong side of TikTok. So while we are here, let's talk about ethical breeding when it comes to pet rabbits. Just like there's an ethical side of dog talk, there is an ethical side of the pet rabbit community. And there are ways to find ethical breeders that raise rabbits that are of good quality. The problem is, just like in the dog world, we have so many backyard breeders that are selling horrible stock that they give us normal breeders a bad name. So there are a few things you can look out for when looking for a pet rabbit if wanting to buy from a breeder. First off, stay away from any chain pet stores. If you cannot verify your lines and who your breeder is, you cannot verify genetics. Odds are you're going to get a rabbit with all kinds of genetic issues or problems because you cannot verify those genetics. 2, if somebody breeds just for pets, that's a huge red flag. Breeding should be purpose-driven, and pets are not a purpose but a byproduct. I personally do not sell pets. I breed for show and for meat. I know a lot of show breeders that will breed their rabbits and they have a byproduct of pets, and they have magnificent rabbits. But, and this gets us into our next point, they cull, and they cull hard, both soft and hard. If you have a breeder that is not willing to hard cull under any conditions, do not buy a pet from them. So if they're not willing to hard cull animals, meaning their genetic nightmares end up in the pet population, you end up with those genetic nightmares. Your pet rabbit should not have any predisposed hip dysplasia or foot problems because you have a breeder that isn't willing to cull for it. That is the sign of a backyard breeder. Find a breeder that is willing to talk to you about their lines, their problems, and their pros of their lines. Good, ethical breeders keep a lot of notes about their lines, and we'll talk about them all day. We'll talk about them all day to the point where you'll get sick of talking to us about it. And finally, when it comes to good, ethical breeders, contracts. Contracts when it comes to pets are super important. It should cover a great many of things. But these contracts don't just protect you, but they protect the breeder. And to be honest, this is just the surface level when it comes to looking for good, ethical breeders for pet rabbits. And again, I'm on Pet Talk for some odd reason. Raising meat rabbits. But it is a good opportunity to talk about ethical breeding.
Hey, Vanessa, can I touch your babies?
Can I just borrow your babies real quick? Look, Vanessa, that is your baby. Is it cute? Do you like it? I love the size difference.
But on a serious note, no, Vanessa is not going to kill her babies if I touch them. In fact, most domesticated rabbits should not kill their babies if you are touching them. And you should be going in, checking the nest box, making sure that everyone is alive and that they are properly fed. I'm going to get these guys covered up and we'll talk about it more. So there's this common myth that if you touch babies, mom is going to kill them. And I think it's been perpetuated, especially for wild rabbits, because too many people go and find wild baby rabbits and play with them and pick them up, and it disturbs the nest. And because of the way bottle feeding works when it comes to wild rabbits, you're most definitely going to end up killing those rabbits in most cases. So when it comes to a wild rabbit nest, if you find baby rabbits, do not touch, leave them alone, they are wild animals. If you are worried that mom isn't coming back or mom isn't feeding them, call a wildlife sanctuary and follow their instructions. But if they say do not touch them, do not touch them. But domesticated rabbits are different, and when you're raising them for meat or for show and you have a nest of babies, it's part of your normal daily checks to go in, pick them up, and make sure they're okay. A good mother is something that most of us will hard cull for. If something isn't a good mother, they don't stay in the program. So let's say Vanessa were to kill her entire litter after I go in and check on them for whatever reason. She would not be in my program for long. Just like I don't deal with an aggressive mama rabbit. I want a mama that is going to let me play with babies, touch her, and make sure everything is okay. This herd management is super important when it comes to raising meat rabbits. And the better mamas you have and the better they are at the job that they have, the easier it will be on you in the long run. So on my video with the little buck with the bunny on his nose, a lot of people thought that was really cool, which it is, but it isn't ideal. We raise show rabbits, and one of the things we look for in our brokens is even patterning. And having a half nose mark can be a deduction of points. So if you have a perfect rabbit and somebody else has a perfect rabbit and they're both identical other than the nose marking, then the one with the full nose marking would get more points and therefore win out. This is Stumpy, and Stumpy is that buck's half-sister, and if you look, she has a full nose mark. This is that buck's father, and as you can see, he has more of a mask, but again, that nose is completely covered. This is Cyrax. She was the best opposite at last show in our Mini Rex category for youth. The patterning on her face is a little less even, but again, she has a full nose marking. And then, of course, my main man, Strawberry.
He again has more of a mask than he does a nose marking, but again, his nose is covered and evenly patterned. Now, some of the rabbits I showed were Rex, some were mini Rex, but either way, when it comes to a broken pattern animal, you want them to have a evenly balanced nose marking, and that's preferable to perpetuate through the lines compared to a half butterfly. Okay, so if I can get Strawberry here, and you gotta remember, Strawberry as my buck as a junior was taking shows left and right, and then as a senior got chunky, because he's a false dwarf and that's what I need in my breeding program. If I can get his body type in a smaller size, that is perfect. He is perfection. In one of my videos, I talked about a rabbit being too soft. He is the exact opposite. He is perfection and a bit too chunky of a body. He is a ball of mayhem, and I absolutely love this little rabbit. I'm gonna breed him to Cyrax here in the next few months, because Cyrax is perfect body shape-wise, perfect fur-wise, and the only problem I have with her is she's a bit on the tiny side. So together, they are going to make perfection, and I'm so excited to take those pairings to convention. Hopefully. I should have juniors for convention this year, so I'm very, very excited. So this is Nina. She is one of my absolute pride and joys in the barn. Although she's not as fond of me as I am of her, but she's come a long way since I first got her. And I am going to breed her tomorrow. The question is to who? Because last time I bred her to Lalo, and if y'all don't know, Lalo is kind of on one of his last strikes, and the only reason he got away with as many as he did is that Vanessa finally took. And thank goodness, because I was going to be really upset to cull that buck. But I don't necessarily want to breed her with Lalo, just getting a litter out of Lalo with Vanessa. Which leaves me with Wiley and Zeus. Now, if I want to focus on sheer mass with my bucks, I'm going to want to breed her to Wiley. Wiley has some of the best type ever, but at the same time, his coat is just not the best. We've talked about it before, where he has more of a flyback fur than he does a standing fur, which was an absolute disappointment when his fur finished out. But I still really want to get some babies out of him and her. But part of me also wants to try out Zeus, because Zeus is at that age where he should try his first breeding out. And I know for a fact Nina is a complete and utter doll when it comes to being bred. She just kind of sits there and lifts. So I kind of want to try out Zeus, and I would love to have more blue babies in the barn. And Zeus, he has a really nice type, not as good as Wiley's, and his fur, oh my god, his fur is outstanding. I mean, look at my sweetest boy. I love this buck. He is by far my favorite silver fox buck and my second favorite buck in the barn. Like, Zeus is stunning, and I want him to have all of the children of his predecessor and namesake. I have a whole naming scheme already ready in the works, but I'm just kind of on the fence about it. And he's the biggest cuddle bug. I love this little boy. He also was not fond of me when I got him. But I will say that me and him have become fast friends because he likes his scratchies and his treats. But sitting here thinking about it, it's like, what do I want to do? Because I really need to get Wiley bred so I can get his replacement made. But I want more of Zeus in general. And this is the problem when I have 4 silver fox bucks. Too many, I know. But it is nice because they are unrelated and I can run 4 lines at the same time. But this buck is stunning. And I'm also stalling to go inside the house because I like to spend time with my bunnies, but it's cold. So I'm trying to tell myself if I continue to make a TikTok, then I can stay out here longer and freeze and it'll be worth it. Rationalizations, man, they're so irrational. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Mr. Zeusy tomorrow, just to see how he does. So Vanessa's litter is a couple of days old now, and this is where we go in daily to make sure that we have nice, full bellies. It's important by about this time that mom's milk has come in, on top of doing our normal checks to make sure that everyone is alive inside the nest box.
In the winter, if a kit dies in the nest box, you risk chilling your other kits, causing more to die. But in the summer, if you let a dead kit sit in the nest box for too long, it'll start to rot in there, and it can attract things like ants. It can also start a fly strike, and it can also attract rats as well. So you want to make sure that your babies are alive and doing well in the nest, and make sure you're treating mama. That's a little extra, but they always enjoy it. But yeah, if you look here, this baby has a nice round tummy, which means Vanessa's milk is starting to come in. So that's what we're looking for, and that's what we want.
So these are the kind of questions I absolutely love when it comes to breeding, just because there is so much thought that goes into this. So when you are breeding a rabbit breed, especially a breed like Rex or Mini Rex, they come in a lot of colors. And most breeders have a certain group they like, or a certain pattern they like, or a certain version of dilute that they like. And they either stick with that color or that color that is compatible with other colors within their lines. Which is different than the dog breeding world when you think about it, because a lot of dog breeders are like, oh, a lot of breeders won't breed for color. But that's not necessarily true in the rabbit world. But when I say that we breed for color, we aren't talking about pets, we are talking specifically for show. Because the show is broken down into like a bunch of different color groups that go against each other. So when you're getting into breeding just for color, there's a lot of things we look at beyond just the color. And the first thing we look at is the health and structural integrity of the rabbit. In the rabbit community, you're going to hear a lot, build the barn before you paint it. In that you want very strong rabbits that you can tweak the color on later. I had somebody on here who was like, look, get a good, healthy rabbit with great structure that carries the color you want, especially if you have a color that is not very common. An example is this lynx here. It's not a very common color, but I can use a black to enhance the color, or I can use a castor to enhance the color. I can even use chocolates in this line if I really wanted to. But I digress. What you want to do is keep an eye on your lines, especially in colors that aren't as refined as your more popular colors, such as like castors and blacks. And just keep tabs on things that go wrong. Are your litter rates dropping? Are your does not breeding for as long as they could? Are your animals more susceptible to things like snuffles? Basically, you just keep a lot of notes on the health of your animals to make sure that they continue to be a strong line, and cull for things that you don't want appropriately. The only difference is because some colors are so recessive, your gene pool just gets smaller, and you just have to keep track of more coefficients and who's a carrier versus who is the recessive. So sometimes in a line, like with my blue-eyed white lines, you'll have a generation that isn't a blue-eyed white, and you have to rebreed the blue-eyed white into that line through Vienna carriers. All summed up, it's just a lot of paperwork and a lot of culling. So we're getting about 60 degrees right now in the homestead, and I am not complaining whatsoever because we have been below freezing for a while. But something that a seasoned mother or a good mother will do is regulate how much fur is covering her babies. So Vanessa is over in the corner over here out of the nest box, but she made sure that all of the fur is off of her babies because of how warm it is.
And if you go and you feel how warm the nest is, it is pretty hot in there. Which is not necessarily appropriate with all this fur she has, with how hot it is in the environment. So her being a good mom, she kind of moves the fur around so that the babies still have a nice covering, but they're not overtly warm. And what we'll see in the next few hours as it gets colder, she'll start to pull that fur into the nest and cover them up again. But again, this is great nest management for a seasoned mom over babies.
I got you. So this comment is in reference to my confirmation video on one of my bucks and kind of breaking it down Barney style on what I mean when I'm going over some things. So one of the first things I talk about is the texture of the buck's fur in that it's too soft. When we're looking at a Rex fur type, we actually don't want it to be too soft. We want it to be nice and densely packed with a nice bounce back, meaning when we put our hand like this, the fur goes back to its natural form. When we say it's too soft, it just means it doesn't have enough hair per follicle, making it so it's not as densely packed. When we talk about a top line, this is the top line. We want it nice and filled in without any lumps or bumps, making them smooth from this side up over to this side. And we want their shoulder right here to rise into a high point along the hip. If they don't have a general rise into a high point, we normally call them flat along the top line. When we talk about this part right here in the shoulder, we want a nice short shoulder in a commercial type, normally less than 3 fingers. When we look at a rear perspective, again, we want it nice and smooth and rounded out with a U formation along the tail. If you have little divots along the hips, normally looking like hip dips, it means they're hollow in this area, which is called the loin. So basically, we want a ball. The more round they are, the better.